Yes, knowledge of the old Gibraltar, knowledge of Gibraltar as it was between 94 and 97 when he was Minister for Europe. I think, of course, updated, but not entirely au fait with the sophistication of the Gibraltar community today, of the importance for Gibraltar of having a relationship which allows us access to the single market, but in particular, and more importantly, access to the United Kingdom as a market, and all of that were the important parts of the updating on Gibraltar, which Mr. Davis, I think, was pleased to receive from us in person, although, of course, he will be receiving this from officials in his department.
Do you think there is a realisation in the UK now the importance of staying in the single market?
Well, look, I think the debate in the United Kingdom has not finished yet. I think there is a lot going on behind the scenes as the UK tries to determine, and we say the UK, that includes the devolved administrations and for the purposes of this discussion, Gibraltar also, what it is that it is going to seek in the context of the negotiation when the negotiation is triggered. Now, you can follow in the newspapers what the ups and downs of whether Article 50 is going to be triggered by a Prime Minister or whether the Lords think it requires a debate in the Parliament. There are legal actions in that respect. A very clear statement from the Prime Minister and from the Minister for exiting the European Union that they consider it's within the royal prerogative and that they'll be able to do it directly. For the government of Gibraltar, that is not a matter in which we're going to become involved in any litigation. This is an issue of politics for the UK. But there is litigation on foot, and I know a Gibraltarian forms part of the many individuals who are trying to bring a class action in that respect. That's in October. That will tell us what happens with the Article 50 process. What is it that the UK wants once it's pressed the trigger on Article 50? I think with the greatest of respect, I think it is possible to say today that the UK doesn't know what it wants. It knows what the referendum tells it. The referendum tells the UK government the people of the United Kingdom have voted against. And I think the Prime Minister has made a fairly good summary of that as she sees it in the Prime Minister's question time yesterday when she said the people of the United Kingdom don't want a free movement as it is today. So I think there's a lot of detail, a lot of nuance in the position. You can appreciate from the newspapers an element of tension between those that represented Remain and those who represent Brexit, even some tension between those who represented Brexit at the time of the referendum. I think the politics of this all has to play out. Our role is to ensure that every single person in that cabinet who is going to be relevant, every single decision maker at a political and at administrative level knows what the essential ingredients of a deal for Gibraltar will be going forward, what things are in the domain of the bilateral between us and the United Kingdom, and what things are in the domain of the multilateral with the rest of the remaining members of the European Union, which for Gibraltar, of course, only means Spain, because the only party that is likely to have any thing to say about Gibraltar in the context of the UK's deal going forward is going to be Spain.
Well, Chief Minister, you've brought up Spain, and over the past few days we've seen different entities in the campo putting perhaps some pressure on the central government in Spain as regards to the 10,000 is the figure that they use, Spanish workers working in Gibraltar.
Well, as you know, and I think all of those colleagues of ours in the campo who are involved in ensuring that this issue never gets out of the headlines when pressure is put on Gibraltar, this has not happened suddenly. This is the process that began in 1984 when Gibraltar, at the time that Spain was seeking to accede to the European Union, agreed to give Spaniards in Gibraltar and anticipatory EU rights, EC rights as they were then. So that is a process that has been built up over these years. Some people may have started work in 1984 and still be here working. There are people who form an important part of our economy. They form part of the creation of the prosperity of Gibraltar as it is today. And it was really quite worrying that a lot of what we were hearing in Spain, emanating from the central government in Madrid, ignored the reality of the hard work these people do in Gibraltar, of the friendship that there is at a human level, but also of the important commercial ties there are between Gibraltar and the Campo. And I think it's very good that from Seville, from the Junta de Andalucía, down to our neighbours in La Línea, those who are politically responsible in the region are making those points in a way that I hope will be heard loud and clear by all decision makers in Madrid, who will, let's keep our fingers crossed as we have done eternally on these issues, finally turn and realize that Gibraltar is an active good for the region, that we're the second largest employer in Andalusia, that there is more that we can contribute, and that we should be working together to create more economic opportunities and leave the issue of our sovereignty being usurped from us by a predatory Spanish current foreign minister who seems to have nothing else to talk about other than Gibraltar aside for another day, because this is going to be a very complex, sophisticated negotiation, not just for Britain, but for the whole of the remaining European Union, and we all have a responsibility of getting it right and not fighting the battles of 312 years ago again in 2016.